For Unit 4, I did farm animals in 2nd grade. For language arts, I did report that animal, which I'll get the students interested in what we're going to talk about, and I'll have them watch a YouTube video on farm animals, and then they'll learn what noises they make, and this will lead us into our mini documentary we're going to do on their farm animal lives. So for processing, we're going to start by having the students name off some farm animals, different ones they know. This will help them with their mini documentary they'll be creating. Since we research different farm animals in social studies, they'll know those farm animals, they'll know where they originated from. So they're going to pick the same one they picked for social studies and use that in their language arts documentary. They'll basically just be talking about where the animal originated from, what they do, basically give them an overview of what the animal does. And then, to top off the process of this, I will ask the student to create a picture that goes along with their mini documentary about their farm animal, basically just talking about what their mini documentary is about. So for mastery, I'm going to assess the students on basically how they share their picture. I want them to share a picture of what their mini documentary is about and give the class a little bit of a more description of seeing that picture than reading their mini documentary off to them. I think that's a great way for students to get involved in their own projects. So then over here, my 3 standards, basically just writing and finding information is what my standards are about. And then my cross-curricular application would be social studies. So we talked about researching farm animals and learning some new information about them. So now we're going to take that information we learned in social studies and we're going to make a mini documentary in our language arts class. And then for our fine arts element is basically going to be drawing the picture to go along with the mini documentary. I want the picture to be drawn so it gives the class a little bit of more understanding of what the mini documentary was about, and it's also a great way for students to just draw something that they know. Social studies, our thing is called Cultured Animals. So for the introduction, we're going to be reading a book called The Jolly Barnyard. This book talks about different farm animals and what they do on the farm and kind of where they originated from and what they do, what their purpose is on the farm. So since we read this book, our processing now will be, I want the students to have a better understanding of farm animals and where some of them originated from. So we'll do some research on their favorite farm animal. So each student will pick a farm animal they like, and we'll do some research about their culture, what they do on the farm, what they eat, and other fun facts kind of about that animal they picked. And then we're going to compile all of our information into a KWL chart, so what we know, what we want to know, and what we learned. And I want them, that's going to how we're going to kind of separate our information we found into more researched, more easily to read chart. So then we're going to use this and put this into our language arts. But just for this social studies project, we're going to be doing just filling out this chart, and then I will be looking at it to make sure they have all of their different parts to it. So basically, like I said, for mastery, I just want to see their KWL chart. I want to see what they found about their animal, what they found interesting, what they already knew, what they wonder still. And I want to talk to them about that so they have a better understanding of what their animal is, so we are able to use this in our language arts project. And over here are my 3 standards I have for this unit. Basically, constructing a map, demonstrating chronological events, and then identifying the main topics out of paragraphs. And it crosses with drama because we are researching our favorite animal in social studies, and then in drama we're going to put on a wax museum of our favorite animal. So that's how they link together. And then in our fine arts element, we are going to be creating a map of the United States, or not of the United States, but of the world. And then we're going to put shapes in different locations of where the animals came from. So let's say circles are for South Africa. So all the animals that came from South Africa, there'll be that many circles there. Or squares or triangles for other countries. So giving us a big picture of where animals actually originated from. Math is called Shapes and More Shapes. So introduction, I'm basically going to introduce the shapes that are on the board and ask the students if they know the shapes, if they know anything about the shapes, and ultimately this will lead us into talking about numbers and shapes and how they go together. So for processing this activity, we're going to be identifying shapes and talking about how many angles they all have together. Angles are very important because they make the shape and they make different shapes, and we want to know how many angles are in each shape, and estimate how big those each angles are. We'll introduce angles and how they form shapes and what they mean, and then we'll get into groups in the class and have them pick a shape they want to learn about. And then we'll just kind of basically go around talking about how many sides, how many angles, how many different elements there are to that shape, and then how can we find these on a farm? Where do you think we'll find them on a barn, in a pasture? Kind of getting the students back to our farm animals and thinking about farm animals and shapes. So for mastery, since we're in a group, I want the students to present their shapes to the class on a piece of paper. They'll talk about them and what the angles they found, and just kind of getting them a rough estimate of how to look at angles, how to estimate angles, and how to present it to the class. So my 3 standards basically are just recognizing shapes and angles and being able to fluently add and subtract within 20 using mental strategies. And then cross-curricular application is to art, because we're discussing shapes and angles in math. And then in our art project, we are going to be sculpting our farm animals. So there we'll need to know the shapes, the angles, the different ways we can put them together to make something. And then fine arts element is we are experimenting with shapes and angles during this unit, which will link to the fine arts because we are talking about shapes and different designs we are creating and different ways we can show that. So for science now is called Habitat of Animals. So introduction is I want the students to thinking about farm animals. So a better way to do that is to take them to a local farm and have them explore firsthand what a farm is like and how the animals live in this diverse area other than wildlife. So basically for processing is we're going to start by first talking about how farm animal habitat is different from place to place. So farm animal habitat is different than wildlife habitat. And we're going to talk about what do farm animals eat, what do they drink, where do they live compared to wildlife habitat. So we're going to kind of compare and contrast those, and we're going to take data over what farm animals do differently than what wildlife animals do, and then we're going to compile that all together, and we're going to do a chart on the computer using a visual art model. So kind of giving the students a broad overview of where animals live, how it differs. So to master this is I want the students to see how much data they were able to collect and if they were able to put the information together as a class, and basically just a good thing about charting and observing data. So there are 3 standards are down here. Basically observing and comparing wildlife, different habitats are what our 3 standards are about. This links into our cross-curricular application of social studies, because social studies we are researching culture and things in animals, and now we are looking up close to the diversity of the habitat of each animal. And fine arts element is we are going to take our data we collected and we are going to make a visual aid on the computer using a digital media resource. So for music now is Wrap That Animal. To introduce this, I will show them a short YouTube video of farm animals kind of created by someone else, so it gets a good picture of how you can create a fun activity about farm animals making a song. So we'll be using GarageBand for our process. So during this processing period, we're going to be using GarageBand. We're going to create a song about farm animals, create a short song about pulling information from social studies and language arts, what we learned about our animal, as well as their drama activity. We're going to be creating a rap or a song. It's up to the student, whichever they feel most comfortable with. And first of all, we're going to try to find a beat. What beat fits our animal? What beat fits the tone that we want to set? So we're going to be focusing on our beat first and the rhythm of the song. And once we have the rhythm and the beat of the song, we will then be adding lyrics to our song. And those lyrics will be pulled from previous units, as I'll be helping the students with this project. So great activity for them to get involved in. So mastery, I'll look at how they did their song, if the beat fits their animal, if they used the right animal, if they used lyrics that we talked about earlier, if they used information from past units. Kind of just a fun activity for students. And then those are my 3 standards, basically, with creating songs and stuff. So cross-curricular application is drama and language arts. So in each of these contents, we are using different parts to our music component, and then fine arts is we're utilizing a musical program and finding the right beat for our song or rhythm that they want for the song. So for art, we're sculpting art. So we're going to do this activity. We're first going to, I'm going to show them a design that I created of something. It doesn't have to be an animal. It could be whatever I wanted. I'll show them this and have them start to get an idea of how they're going to sculpt their animal. First, the students are going to think of farm animals they have been using throughout the different areas. So during this processing time, they're going to think of a farm animal that they picked from the beginning. And then we're going to think about how we're going to sculpt that and how we're going to think of ways we can use different materials to make our animal. So the materials that the students use is completely up to them. I just want them to get a broad picture of them sculpting their animal out to show everyone. And I'll assist during this process with the students to help make sure that they understand what they're doing. And it might be a little hard for them to do this, but it'll be a great experience for them. So for mastery, I'm going to assess the students in general terms. This is a hard project for them to do, but I just want to see their creativity shine through and what they're learned through it. So I'll assess them if they completed the art project and if they used the correct animal, since the materials is up to them. Those are my 3 standards, basically brainstorming and analyzing how to use different art pieces and distinguish between different materials that they would use. And then, so this will cross-curricular with drama, because we're creating a wax museum, and in art we're sculpting the farm animal that we'll be using in our wax museum to go along with what the person is saying. The students are using different shapes, so that's a fine art element. They're using different materials and textures for their sculptures, as well as techniques they have learned during our fine arts element. So for drama, creating a scene. We're going to introduce this activity. I will show a short video of a student presenting a wax museum. I want the students to understand how these work and what they'll be expected to do. So for processing this activity, the students will put together a script of what they are going to say about their particular animal they picked. So yet again, using the stuff we talked about in language arts and social studies. I'll have them compile the information into a little saying, a little description of their animal. They'll practice by saying it to me and to saying it to their classmates, so they can be ready to present it to the rest of the people in the school if they would like. We'll also have them create a costume to wear, what may represent their animal or something that symbolizes it. They'll also be having their sculpture of their animal that they made in art class next to them to kind of give the audience a better understanding. So for mastery is I will assess the students on how well they presented their wax museum to the crowd. I'm basically just having them perform it. It's a great idea for them to get out and talk about something that they have worked on so hard and to have them see something they presented. So just kind of, if they gave the topic about the right animal, that's kind of what I'll grade them on. And then my 3 standards over here are collaborating with peers, using physical expression, and participating in big group activities, which is a wax museum. So I'm going to cross this with language arts, because we're working on a mini documentary in language arts. And then we're going to take that information we learned about our animal and create it into our script for our wax museum. And then for our fine arts element is we are creating a wax museum which uses our creativity as well as making our own wax museum. So we are basically acting out in theater, acting out our animal to the rest of the community. And that is my unit 4 lesson plan.